I mean, you're in alpha now as well, aren't you?
I am,
So
yes.
we've both been able to have a little go at those ones. I mean, what struck me about it, lore-wise, is a year ago, or let's say a year and a half ago at least, we had these two great existential threats. We had the Burning Legion, which is this thing that you can't defeat, and we had the Old Gods, which is this thing you can't defeat. So then in the space of that 1.5 years, we've defeated the Legion, and by beating up a planet. And also now, with the first raid in the next expansion, we're exploring a facility that is designed to work out how to kill an old god without killing the planet. So it's almost like Blizzard are gearing up for some sort of end game with it. I don't know.
That's kind of the hope, and it's really going to depend on like the cell that this whole Titan facility is supposed to. What's the execution that's supposed to happen with this Titan facility? As far as we know, it's supposed to be like, okay, the keepers are like, hey, let's figure out how to defeat these old gods once and for all without harming the planet. Let's build this facility, and presumably, because all this is, of course, speculation and all that, that big giant robot looking thing on top is supposed to, I'm guessing it's supposed to be, it was a creation from the keepers. They're like, hey, let's build this thing, and this will serve as like the jailer of this old god-like thing. I don't even know if it's an old god or not, but we're gonna experiment on this thing and see what happens. And clearly, things went wrong over time.
Yeah, because I don't think the Titans were very scientific about it. Amonthul grabbed hold of Yasharaj, pulled it out, and oh no, it's awful, really bad. We can't kill them.
It's a flesh wound. Don't worry, guys. Let me just jab it back in and just cover it up, and we're okay.
Yeah, I mean, none of the others stood back and said, well, maybe if we try killing them by doing something other than just ripping them out, we might be able to kill them, like inject them with poison or something. But no, they didn't really think about that. So. But yeah, the fact that they are actually going to be doing that, and not because it blew me straight away when I first got in. There was only one zone for Horde and one zone for Alliance, and in the first Horde zone, which is the swampy zone, and you had this thing at the end of it that was calling itself a keeper. And I'm thinking to myself, hang on a minute, all the keepers are accounted for. Where's this guy come from? Is he a keeper, or is he just calling himself a keeper? We don't really know. Well, I don't really know anyway. But it all of a sudden looks like there's several keepers that we didn't know about and were mentioned in the original Chronicles Volume 1 either.
Yeah, and it's like there's like lesser keepers, like Archimedes, I think is the name. Like he was just like a low level kind of guy over in Uldaman. If I'm probably wrong about this, I don't remember off the top of my head.
He was a named keeper though, yeah. So he was a named keeper.
Yeah, so there was a crew of folks that were like doing some work. The only thing that I can presume, because I'm going with the Chronicle as like the established thing. This is the Bible. This is the thing in stone to summon. And then everything on top of that is something that Blizzard kind of has to worm its way around and try their super bestest to not retcon. So that's why I'm kind of going with the theory that this keeper-like thing on top of that Nazmir building thing, that it's some sort of creation by the keepers. Because remember, Keeper Freya created the Emerald Dream, so they're capable of pretty amazing things. So if they make like some giant robot that can do things with the old gods,
I mean, they can wipe out life on Azeroth and start again. I mean, they've got the tools to do that.
Exactly. So going in there, it is very curious as to whether or not the old gods are this invulnerable thing that can't ever be destroyed. I mean, we saw it with Pandaria, with Usarge, and nothing was left but his heart, but it was causing so much damage, and it was influencing the bug people, whatever they were called.
The Klaxi,
The Klaxi, thank you. And there was a lot going on there based on the corpse of an old god. So what's this active agent, this presumably almost old god like entity Gahoon? What's it up to? What's its end game, if anything?
Well, its end game is the corruption of what it says in the Chronicles. It's the corruption of the world's soul, because, and don't ask me how this is supposed to be a thing, but if you can turn a Titan into a being of the void, it can destroy the whole universe, and the Void wants to destroy the whole universe. It tried to corrupt the Titans when they'd already been sort of born, and it didn't work. So then they said, we need to get them in embryonic phase and do it that way. So that's their ultimate plan, because they only need apparently one will. So that's why Sargeras went mad and said, we can't risk it because they only need one. And I've never really understood why one Void Titan would be able to defeat all other Titans. But then Sargeras defeated all the other Titans as well, so I don't know.
Yeah. So I guess there was that. So I think it became this insane, irrational fear in part of Sargeras by seeing this Void Titan thing. He's like, holy crap, I gotta take this thing out. So boom, cleave. He cleaves the planet in two, kills everything on there, end of story. But I guess that fear is that I guess he knows that Sargeras is stronger than the Pantheon itself. He's able to somehow defeat them or come, he's their champion. That's how it was sold. So knowing that he has that kind of fear, of course, first off, he'd go to the Pantheon because, hey, those are the strongest bros and broette that he knows. He's going to try to enlist their help. That didn't work out. And, and then the rest of history will just wrote itself. So it's that crazy fear that turned him into basically a villain, but in his head, he's like, no, I'm doing the right thing. This is the best scenario possible by just destroying everything ever.
Well, destroying all life anyway. His grand plan was we destroy all life and the Void stuff, and then maybe new life will Void stuff there. But, I'm not quite sure how that plan was going to work, given that half the universe is Void.
Exactly. After seeing the events right after the Argus defeat cinematic and the Seed of the Pantheon, you just look around. It's like, oh, okay, around here, that's a lot of Void planets that we're seeing around here. What gives? There's quite a bit of corruption out there, and this is in pretty close proximity. This isn't just, hey, in the far off galaxy over here, there's something going on. It almost seems like a good chunk of the universe is screwed already.
But if it's just on planets that don't have a world soul, then they're just limited to that planet.
That's one thing that I'm kind of curious about, is whether or not, apart from the Void Gods apparently just kind of pooping out, the Void Lords just kind of pooping out old gods all over the place. Can Void Gods, can the old gods make spaceships? Can they travel throughout the galaxy, or is it just,
I don't know. I got the impression it was a bit like an Empire Strikes Back, where they just fire off all the probe droids everywhere trying to find Hoth, and eventually one lands in it. I think it's just that, really. But again, we they've committed this grand suicide all the time to save Azeroth, who is supposed to be the most powerful of all. But at the same time,
typical, right?
How do we know there isn't another world soul out there somewhere, and there's another old god, burrowing its way into that?
And that I think is just kind of Blizzard's out. It's like, oh, you know what? We'll just add another Titan, or we'll create some sort of corrupted Titan that now Azeroth has to defeat in WoW's 17th expansion. And because this is it. This is really it.
Well, the thing is, what we're building up to is the point where we can't live on Azeroth anymore, because when Azeroth wakes up, that's it. We need a new home, unless we're going to live in our ass crack or something. So
I trust we're going to live in our ass crack. That I totally buy into that.
But I just think, I thought it was maybe the way they end World of Warcraft and move on to whatever the next Warcraft thing is going to be. That Azeroth wakes up, and maybe they're moving towards it because they finished off the Legion in fairly short order, when you might be forgiven for thinking it was this thing that you can't really defeat, because how are you going to take on Sargeras, especially with no other Titans around at the time? But oh look, it turns out the Titans are around. I still don't know how that's worked out. And now they're saying, well, old gods maybe can be defeated because there's this facility now, we're working on it. And if we could defeat the old gods, and there's only a few of them, they're finite in number.
Just a couple left that are
what
in
is there
fighting
left?
condition.
That's it.
You know, this is one of those pull it out of my ass kind of theories, but part of me wonders if, I mean, we know that Azeroth is sentient. She's, you know, going with the fact that she's a she based on what Magni says. It's a lady, a very nice lady, I'm sure. And because she's conscious, she knows what's going on, she knows the apparent danger. Do you think that there might be a scenario where Azeroth itself will somehow, I don't know, like crystallize itself, like not like a suicide, but more like freeze its own world soul, so that way it can never be corrupted? But of course, the obvious trade-off is that Azeroth will never wake up, which will nullify the entire universe threat.
But it doesn't. Like I said, I don't think they would do that because, like Magni in that scenario, keeps talking about how afraid she is and things like that. So, you know, Azeroth certainly at the moment feels very, very vulnerable, or did do. Well, presumably still does because the old gods are still there. And now, you know, some fool stabbed a sword in her and she's bleeding Azerite everywhere. That's probably going to be quite distressing. But again, it comes down to this other thing. How do you know there isn't another world soul out there somewhere? And it only takes one to get hit by an old god. And that's a problem that's, you know, is unlikely to be dealt with by anyone on that system, because it would have to be a world soul that hasn't been come along and ordered by the Pantheon, because otherwise they would know about it. So it's an undiscovered one that hasn't been ordered, so there's no key against any old god invasion. Yeah, so there's like, it's pretty much defenseless. It's as if it's Aman'Thul, you know, since he was the first Titan, like it's as if he's by himself. But unlike before, there's old god stuff all over the place, with most of the planets corrupted, you know, and this and if this Titan happens to wake up, it's going to see, wow, there's this place is a mess. What am I going to do about this? There's all this black, purpley, gooey stuff on all these planets. What am I going to do? So, like, will that be the precursor for like I don't think it's going to be a precursor for a World of Warcraft 2. I don't think something like that is in anyone at Blizzard's mind, really. It feels so far off, especially after their failed attempt with the Titan project. I just don't see a future. But at the same time, I don't think Blizzard wants to effectively end the World of Warcraft, because that effectively ends the franchise, and that's a lot of money to let go. Well, that's the thing. But yeah, I mean, that's why I didn't understand where, because if you look at the trajectory of it, you know, Legion gone, oh look, it is possible to kill old gods safely. Then that's the sort of path you're on at the moment. And it wouldn't surprise me now, because I didn't even think when Legion came out that we are actually going to defeat the Legion. I just thought, you know, it was another repel all borders, maybe, you know, rescue Argus, liberate Argus, strike a blow against them, but actually defeating them completely, I was a bit surprised, because it's one of your two existential threats that's now been wiped out. And then you think, well, oh gods, there's nothing we can do about those except keep beating them back down into their pits. But now all of a sudden, oh well, maybe there is a way. It's funny, you know, from your paladin's humble beginnings in Northshire Abbey, did they ever think that they would walk out of there, you know what, in a couple of years I'm going to be in space and I'm going to be hanging out with these giant celestial beings, and I'm going to save them from absolute destruction, and so on and so forth. Yeah, I mean, I particularly remember the Wrath Beater thinking they were ramping it up a bit too much, because in vanilla, you go into Uldaman, and there's a dungeon where you're finding evidence that the Titans existed. So at that point in the game, Titans themselves are a myth. It's not like a given that they even existed. They're just a legend. And you're finding evidence that they actually existed because you find Titan constructs, you find a keeper that you end up defeating. I'm sure it was a misunderstanding, but he had a nice sword. And then you find the discs of Norgan on there. And then I remember in the Wrath Beater getting around, flying around, and I'm thinking, there's huge Titan constructs here. There's huge Titan buildings. you come to this point, you're thinking, well, there's now no doubt that Titans exist. And I thought myself then that it was getting a bit too epic, a bit too grand in scale. But then what was happening then is nothing like what's happened now.
Yeah, I mean, before we just kind of presumed, oh, these Titan things, it's the remnants of something lost that we're just kind of helping to clean up the mess that they had left behind, and like that's it. But then it kept going. It kept going, and we started to see more and more of this Titan stuff. You know, in Cataclysm, we see Uldum, and we see the Forge of Origination, and everything that happens there. In Pandaria, we see the Mogu, and we find out, oh, they're not just big rock things; they're actual Titan creations. And hey, here's where they came from. Here's their little factory, and here's the Thunder King, who's actually a Titan construct ish kind of thing. It's maddening, the way I see it, because I too had humble beginnings back in what's the Blood Elf place, Sunstrider Isle, and I never would have thought that I would go to other dimensions and see alternate universes and go almost toe to toe with Titan spirits. It's pretty nuts, and it's hard to imagine like where you go next from here. And I can see Blizzard's attempt to bring things down a bit, and that's that I think is what a lot of the Battle for Azeroth expansion is for, to kind of bring it back home. Let's remind everyone, hey, we're all trying to kill each other too. Let's not forget that, everybody. But they're still keeping that whole old god thing there, because I think they know that people would be really mad if this whole escalating story, that element of the big bad, so to speak, were just totally thrown under the rug. But I think there could have been ways, like going back to what you're saying with the Legion, there could have been ways to shut them down without necessarily nullifying them completely. I really didn't think that Sargeras would be like, oh, okay, I'm just gonna get captured after being caught, and they just suck me up and that's the end. That part felt very anticlimactic. I mean, this is Sargeras. This is the guy who's supposed to look at you and you die. I mean, like, it's too much almost.
I mean, I know there's a lot of people that would like it if it were scaled back, because there's a lot of people in a role-playing game like this, they like to be the mysterious stranger who rides into town, solves the problems, and they go away, and who was that masked man? And they don't like the fact that, you became increasingly powerful. Like in WoD, you were this big general, and in Legion that you're this, you're the head of your order hall, and you're this super important, very famous person, especially as, you get brought back down to earth anyway, when the next thing you do is go into the next expansion. Oh, by the way, can you pick up this raccoon dung for me, please? Yeah, sure, no problem. But again, if they were going to be scaling it back, which is what I thought first, I would have thought the last thing you would do is say, oh, by the way, do you fancy going to this place to learn how to kill old gods?
Right. It's the transition doesn't quite fit into it, because it's this crazy seesaw, right? We defeat the Legion, and then the Horde and Alliance governments pull us back and tell us, hey, can you kill a bunch of these people over here? And I'm like, I'm the goddamn High Lord. Why are you trying to? You can't tell me what to do, but they tell me what to do, because I'm a good boy. I'm a good guy. Yeah. And so we go. And then in this whole Battle for Azeroth shindig, we're helping people get boats, because apparently we can't build boats on our own. And then we discover once again this old god threat, and once again everything scales up, and Magni reminds us, hey, no, this isn't how it's supposed to be. You're still important. Azeroth is still in danger. Remember, there's a big ass sword right over there that's still there, and it just doesn't feel right.
It won't be there when we get into the expansion. We'll be dealing with that, but that's where we'll use in our artifact weapons. But yeah, it does. It seems odd. You've come from that, and then you go to, and then because when I first got into the alpha, they still had the starter quest. It's not there anymore, but it was there. No. So you burst into Stormwind, and Anduin's talking to, Jaina, and he sends you and Jaina off to convince Kulturas to come back within the alliance. And so you're going off this really important mission, and the first thing I do is go and rescue a pig. So you know, it does. It just has all these things again, and I think that's why a lot of people would just prefer it if they were just like this unknown person who just keeps popping up to help out, without anyone really knowing who they are. But Blizzard obviously kept ramping it up and ramping it up.
Yeah, I have headcanon, right? There's fan fiction in my head that just begs for just a return to that feeling of, hey, let's just be an adventurer all over again. Let's be normal. And my first thought was I had like a previous theory. Obviously, I'm wrong going back on this, but I was hoping that by the end of Legion, that something almost catastrophic would happen with our class orders, with let's say a number of our champions happen to sacrifice themselves, because sacrifice is kind of a big thing in Legion. So if our champions happen to sacrifice themselves to help defeat the big bad and save the day and yada yada yada, my hope would be that our champions would feel humbled to the point where, you know, it's like, okay, we've done so much, I'm tired, I'm just going to relinquish my artifact weapon. No flash, no pomp and circumstance. It's just this, here you go, I'm going to walk away. That's the end of the expansion. And then the start of the next expansion is a very unflashy, just kind of, I get on a boat, I go somewhere, and I start like a new adventure, you know, and at least for a good chunk of the expansion, I'm totally disconnected from the Horde Alliance politics. I don't hear anything about these old gods or this, you know, or the Legion invasion. You know, none of that stuff is having a big effect with what I'm doing. I'm just being an adventurer kind of person again. Like that I would have loved. But I know a lot of people would have hated it too. It'd be like, what about all this other stuff that's going on?
Well, it could be like being Sherlock Holmes when you go on holiday and then a murder happens. You know, you could just happen to go to a retreat to go away and do a bit of meditation, and then all of a sudden an old god attacks. Oh, I suppose I'd better help out then.
Yeah, I mean, it would have been cool if, you know, if they did go off into like some new place, some relatively unknown place where you're not known, you're renowned. It's like, who are you? You're just some dude wearing some flashy armor. That's nice, but yeah, we need you to save a pig because you look stout, right? But maybe there could be some sort of villain that isn't trying to destroy everything, but is just a bad guy or girl and is trying to do, and is just up to no good. And it's our job to try to help out without making too big of a fuss. And I think that would have been cool. I think people would have disagreed with the idea of, well, shoot, I'm level 120 now. Why am I trying to save this set of villages from a bandit crime lord person? Yeah. But you know, it's levels. It's relative. It's still a threat. You know, someone can still, if someone stabbed my tank in the eyeball, it would probably hurt a lot still. You know, but I would just love to see something like that.
Yeah, I mean, you know, that's to say, it's just like you say with the Cecil, we just get this cycle, don't we? We do very mundane things, and then it gets ramped up, and then we get to level cap, and then it ramps up a bit more. We do those dungeons, which still aren't available for testing, and then it's into the raid, and then it's all very grand again. Especially with the Azerite armor. I mean, we're getting Azerite armor now. We're scooping up all the blood from Azeroth and daubing it on ourselves like some sort of. I'm sure
I'm sure she'll love that. She'll just look at us and be like, yeah, all this Azerite stuff. Woo, got a new Azerite helmet, and I'm going to use your blood. See, look at me. Yes. You know, wearing the whole Azerite amulets as if it's like, you know, sporting my gold chains. Like, yep, I'm doing this. I'm wearing you, lady. But I'm sure she's a very nice lady.
Yes, wondering what we're doing, swimming around in her blood. Yeah. But,
so
there you go.
So, do you share the seemingly majority opinion on these Azerite traits? These not the system, but we'll go over both. But what do you think about those traits? These cute little bonuses.
Well, we don't know what they are. That's the thing. Because all we've got is, I don't know why they brought it out. All we've got is the starter piece, which is your bargain basement piece. It's a bit like the artifact weapon when we first got it. All right, that's nice, 750 item level, great. But it had nothing on it. And that's what we've got here with the Azerite chest. You know, it's the starting piece. It presumably will have to get better with the even quest reward stuff, which we haven't seen. Dungeon must be better still. We haven't seen that. And the raid stuff, the best of all, we haven't seen that. So we don't know what they're going to be like, which also makes it very difficult to judge classes. So, you know, people saying that whether their class or spec feels good or not, it's quite difficult because the Azerite traits that you get, particularly from the raids, which will, as Blizzard said, add in more interesting gameplay features that might cover a few apparent gaps. But we don't know because it's not there for testing.
Yeah, my big gripe on it is that it's a system of three pieces of armor, and we can swap things around, and maybe cool things can happen from it, but they only give us one. And without those kinds of options to play with, the whole idea of a possible meta, switching around gear, trying to get the best combination, and trying to achieve that sort of synergy, we can't even begin to explore the idea for that. All we have is the one thing that I presume is just like leveling kinds of traits, because it would be very awkward, and it would be very awkward to see a wasted trait such as a life on kill sort of deal. It's like, wow, this is good. This is going to be fucking great in this raid fight that I'm doing. Whoop-de-doo me. And it feels irresponsible that Blizzard only came out with like this one piece.
That was my view on it, because Blizzard, like the stuff, they've got a lot of stuff that they're just not releasing on alpha. They could do, they just don't want it testing just yet. And they are doing it for two purposes. The alpha, obviously they need stuff tested, but they're also doing it for marketing to build up a hype. So I would have thought it was a bit of a PR disaster to bring out this one, because you can imagine it. I kept saying, you can imagine it from Blizzard HQ point of view. Oh, they're really wanting to see our Azerite armor. Give them one piece, they'll love that. And then they turn around and go, hang on a minute, everyone hates it. What's going on? And they, from their point of view, they probably think the criticism is unfounded because actually, you know, there's loads of really great traits coming, but they're not showing it us. You know, I'd have rather they just waited until they could at least release the leveling stuff, because all the quest rewards that would give you Azerite armor at the moment just give you these things with primary stats on them and nothing else. Well, it's clearly Azerite armor, but you know, you're not getting them. Same with dungeon loot. You can get dungeon chests and stuff like that. I've got one. It's just something with strength and stamina on it. That should have been all ready to go. And there should have been at least a loot table for some of the raid bosses as well, you know, for having a look at least before we test it, just so that we can start to provide some meaningful feedback on it. Whereas they were obviously from this going to get really bad feedback because, you know, they're showing us the worst piece of Azerite armor in the game.
Before I started getting really serious with YouTube and streaming and stuff, I did game testing. And oftentimes, whenever I would get a version of a game, which is very early, I would get a version of the game, and they would typically give me instructions, and they would give me context, and they would say, hey, here's these things that we'd like you to test out. This is the very narrow scope that we want you to look at. And on top of that, this is what we intend to do. This is what we intend to deliver on, maybe in a couple of weeks or so, in a couple more builds. So I was really hoping that at the very least, Blizzard would have added in a couple of words in just a little statement by saying, hey, you know what? This is leveling stuff. This is stuff intended for, this is early leveling Azerite traits. And if they said that, then a lot of this negativity or a lot of this feedback and criticism, it wouldn't have happened, because people would have been like, oh, well, you know, these traits do suck, but they're leveling traits, so no big deal. Okay, let's look for more stuff.
Yeah, because although the traits will inevitably be better from dungeons and raids, we don't know that the system would be any different. So for me, for example, because I try on the Paladin, I mean, the top row, you've got that like generic one, and then you've got one for each spec, and that's the same for all of the classes.
Yeah.
And then on the next one down, you've got 3. Now, if you're a pure DPS class, you've got 3 different DPS options, so you've got choice. Now, me as a paladin, there's 1 tanking choice, 1 healing choice, and 1 DPS choice. So for me as a rep paladin, well, there's no choice at all. I'll click the 1 DPS choice that is available. Now, that could just be on that piece, or maybe it's just on the leveling pieces, and on the dungeon gear is a bit more scope. But I don't know that. It could be that that is the template for even the best pieces that you get from a raid, in which case there's limited choice on the top row, no choice at all on the second row, and on the last row it's just your item level increase. So maybe the only one where you get a choice is the one where there's 2, and usually that's between like a speed boost and a bit of as you say, life when you kill something, a bit of health back.
Yeah, the whole life on kill is like doo-doo. I don't
we
know.
can't.
Oh god.
Yeah. So
sorry, go on.
People are obviously going to jump to conclusions because we haven't been told anything about how they're intended to work, much less shown any.
So it does suck because we are in a way free hype. We are Blizzard's free hype machine. Yay!
Yeah.
And but at the same time, we're not quite getting all the tools that we need, as in the information that we need in order to express better opinions. We're just kind of blindly going with whatever they give us. And one thing that I observed from the dungeon loot is that there are 8 pieces per slot per armor type, so it's 96 pieces in all, and and that's just dungeon loot. So it makes me wonder just how many unique traits are there going to be spread across these 96 some odd. Actually, let me scale that back and limit it to like a paladin, since that's what we both play. Let's limit it to plate gear. So that's 24 pieces of possible armor, or 24 traits. How would that be spread out? And I can't even come close to figuring out like how big the meta could possibly become.
Well, this is it. You see, there's nothing to stop that. It doesn't necessarily have to be completely unique traits on each individual piece, does it? It could just be unique combinations of traits.
Yeah.
Again, that's something else we don't know. It would be a bit worrying if there were literally, because I think one of the problems with legendaries was that there were just so many of them that having to come up with unique, powerful effects must have put a hell of a strain on the development team. And it's no wonder we got some legendaries, like some people got their first legendary Legion, just looked at it and thought, what the hell is this? I can't even.
That's true. This. Yeah. So I recall some of the pure DPS classes were like, this is fucking garbage. What the?
Exactly.
Wow, these are great stats. Whoop-de-doo for us.
Well, sometimes it wasn't even that. The first Pride as for some, not for everyone, but for some, wasn't even good enough. The stats were not even good enough to even wear it as a stat stick as your first legendary. So there were some people getting a legendary that they were literally not equipping even as just a token stat stick.
That's true. That was when secondaries were really thrown out of whack. Totally. So that did play in a factor. You're right. Wow. But it does make me wonder just how deep can the system go. And one thing that I'm a little worried about is, and although I'm probably sure that this is going to happen, is that there will be traits that if you happen to have the same trait selected among your Azerite gear, that you'll get a stacking effect. It'll become more powerful, and that's nice. That's cool. But then I think that the theory crafters, the people that are far, far smarter than me, will be able to easily discern, hey, you know what? It's just stack that particular set of traits and you're good. And to me, that doesn't feel like a whole lot of fun. I would prefer something where there's a bit more synergy between your abilities and like having a certain set of traits that just happen to work best for AoE, for single target, for a dungeon, for a particular raid encounter and such. But it's really going to depend on just how many unique, maybe not unique traits, but at least among these 20 some odd pieces of gear per armor type, how many of them are going to, how many combinations of traits will there be? it's complicated in my head.
There will be at least millions. And that is a genuine concern. There's two big concerns I have about it. One is it's very similar to the old talent tree systems, where occasionally, because no one really thought of it, you would get combinations of talents that made you stunningly powerful. For example, there was a mage who soloed a lot of bosses in Naxxramas while it was still not the tier 3 but the tier 7 Naxxramas, while it was still current, by just taking advantage of a couple of mage talents. And then the other issue is, so just talking about the talents that we have now, one of the failings in Legion is sometimes being that there's a talent that you must take in all situations, or at least that there's dead talents that you would never take in any situation. So let's say they get talents and they're actually working pretty well. So for me, Ret Paladins, they're actually looking pretty good. They all look like they've got their use. But with certain traits, it is possible that actually with those traits, you're always going to take this talent. And then you're back to a situation where realistically, you've got dead talents again, or you've got a talent that you're always going to take. That's a realistic problem. And it's not one that you can easily work out because there are so many combinations of traits going to be possible. It's just going to take that one person to happen across a combination, which may not happen until it's gone live. And then, yes, they may break the game with something that no one's thought of.
I mean, the hope is that during, over the course of alpha, as we go into the beta and all that we'll just have access to all of this gear, that we'll be able to just buy a whole bunch of it and then play around with it and see what we can possibly break. Because the WoW community is a pretty effective weapon when it comes to looking for these sorts of exploits and pointing these things out. They're not perfect, wow. just like how Blizzard definitely ain't perfect with trying to identify certain things, but as long as people aren't trying to hide stuff so they can exploit it for later.
Some people, if they find one, they think to themselves, actually, I can make use of this. I just won't tell anyone.
Exactly. And of course the hope is that no one else is going to find out. And the theory crafting community is only so big. It may take some sort of freak accident for someone to be like, oh wow, all of a sudden I totally broke an integer and now I'm doing like millions of damage per second. This is cool. But that's something I'm sure that Blizzard will, once that particular person does it, they'll be like, oh my god, I'm going to make a YouTube video out of this. This will be awesome. And then, or Asmongold is going to be like, hey guys, let me show you guys how to solo mythic raids. Here's what you do. And then Blizzard will come down pretty quickly on that.
These things do happen. Isn't there someone, I didn't watch it. Someone linked a video, a very recent video, in terms of how to get an extra, something to do with PvP, nicking an extra relic or something. I can't remember.
Oh wow!
But there's still little things that people are finding now in terms of breaking the game, because there's always something people won't think about. I mean, it's a bit like the Reckoning Bomb in vanilla, where a Protection Paladin soloed a world boss because they did something. The game had been out at that point, and no one else had thought about it at that point. Of course, as soon as it happens, Blizzard gets straight onto it. But until someone thinks about it and points it out, then it's in the game and available.
But in the end, while it does make for bad optics for Blizzard to be like, we would look into this and be like, oh wow, Blizzard, you totally fell off on this. How did you not know about this? Because it really depends on their response time too. If they respond to that something like that quickly, come down on it hard and explain to people, okay, please don't do this. Otherwise, we'll ban you. For people that already did do this, oh well. World first guild, world top 10 guilds. You guys, we hold you to a bigger standard, that sort of thing. As long as they respond quickly enough, then I think that's fine. Because a lot of, I think the majority of people aren't going to experience something like that, or it won't get that widespread, I don't think.
No, but I mean, there are so many combinations that no one they can't realistically possibly account for all of them. And I don't even know how large a quantum supercomputer you'd need to run all the combinations and try and work out little exploits. So it is just going to come down to someone being a bit clever with it. But we'll just have to see. I mean, that's just one of those things we'll have to work out. The biggest problem is going to be people going, you know, which bits of Azerite Gear should I be getting? Which traits should I be getting? Because the answer is still going to be, well, you're going to have to sim it, I'm afraid. Because
yeah, the sims are going to be. I'm not a big sim kind of person, but it will be very, very interesting to see what that side of the community is going to do. I'm pretty sure that they're already just kind of biting their fingernails in anticipation. Oh, there's a build coming. Uh-oh, there's going to be Azerite traits. Let's start thinking of how we're going to calculate all this stuff. But at the same time, I think bringing in these Azerite traits is going to give players an opportunity that they didn't have before. Maybe, but that at least not since the talent system previous to Cataclysm, when you started to really like start getting into specializations, and it kind of locked you into those specs until you've got a certain number of points and so on and so forth. This gives a lot more freedom, as you know, it's a double-edged sword, I think, but it gives a lot of freedom for players to experiment based on, hey, I have this gear, I happen to get this gear from all these dungeon runs that I've been doing. What can I do with this to do something fun? And even if it's, my hopes are that there's two kinds of trait combinations. One are the best in slot ones, the ones that the competitive like players, as well as people that just want to read a guide and figure out what's the best thing. That's the thing to go for. The other side of it are more just fun kinds of things. Like if there was some sort of build that you can make where you can take very little damage, but you're dealing very little damage at the same time. You know, something off the wall that's not exactly viable, but it would be great in a world quest situation where you pull a bunch of elites and everything explodes because of some weird combination that you have on your traits combined with your skills and a potion or something like that. I think that kind of experimentation is something that we haven't really seen in a while.
Yeah, I mean, what'll realistically happen is the biggest problem will be, I mean, we had this in Legion. There's a lot of people want their this list, which doesn't exist in Legion. It's not going to exist in BFA. Right. But you'll have a situation where people will come along and go, okay, I've got these bits of gear. What should I be using? And then you can work that out, because raid bots is a godsend for that, because it means people don't even have to deal with the quite user-unfriendly simcraft, because you've got a user-friendly format for it. But the other thing is, there'll be an extra thing now in BFA, because it'll be like, okay, you've got these bits of Azerite, so you should use that, and you should use those traits. But that also means you should now use these talents when you were using completely different talents. So remember when I said you should use this talent in a single target because it's the best one for you? Actually, now that you've got these traits, it's now the other one. So there's an extra level of complexity on it for those who don't want to min-max and just pick the prettiest thing, which is what I do, because that's what Blizzard said we should do with the Netherlight Crucible. So that's what I do on my alts now. You know, I just go, oh, which one's prettiest? Oh, I'll click that one. I like that one. Because that's what they want me to do. So there'll be some people who can do that. That's fine. But for those who want to know, but don't want to go to a lot of effort to find it, it's going to be more problematic. And they're going to get very upset with people who tell them they need to sim it all, because they're going to have to sim their talents as well as their gear.
Yeah, that side of things, it feels to me that is a burden on those kinds of players that are looking for that sort of they're looking to min-max, but they're not exactly on top of their own class, and not quite understanding. They understand well enough, hey, I can plug in these numbers and then I can do this, but they're not exactly on top of the very sensitive nuances of their classes, maybe, where it's like, okay, I can do all these things, but you know, what if I had these traits? I know that they're not popular, but what if I tried this? Because they might be great in this sort of situation, or they might see traits from the dungeon journal, and because that's probably the greatest godsend that we can at least transparently see all this gear, and it'll give opportunities for players to dedicate themselves to be like, I want that set. And I think having that sort of feeling is something that was definitely missed in Legion, because it was more like, oh, I need legendaries. Shit, I better better do the thing that gets me the fastest chance to up my bad luck protection and possibly get the stuff. And, you know, so you were just kind of blindly looking around for shiny magic things, whereas at least in the Battle for Azeroth, I'm able to target the things that I'm looking for and dedicate myself to completing this certain set that I want and experimenting with it, and then finding out that it's total garbage, and I'm like, wow, okay, let's go back to the drawing board and then try this all over again.
As long as it's not a dungeon that no one wants to do.
Yes,
like where the tier gloves, the dungeon tier gloves used to drop in vanilla. Like the Lightforge set, they dropped from the last boss in Blackrock Depths. And to do the last boss in Blackrock Depths, you needed a mage to Arcane Explosion all the little lads near the Flame Keepers. And you would find loads of paladins who wanted to go and do that boss, amazingly. And it was very difficult to find a mage who could be arsed with it, because it didn't drop any of their dungeon gear.
My vanilla classic experience was terrible. I was a warlock back then because there were no Horde Paladins, so screw that. Blackrock Depths, I think I've only completed it maybe like 3 times. 3 times like ever. And the realm that I was on, it was abysmal. It was very bad. It was very difficult to get anything done over there. And it was just tough for players like me, because I was a very different person back then. I still love the Warcraft franchise, but I was totally new to MMOs. I was like, I don't want to deal with these people. This is like it's kind of scary. And this whole motivation for gear and sets and stuff, oh, no way. I think I want to just keep rolling different classes until I, complete every single zone and every single quest, which is what I ended up doing. And that was a form of fun. It's weird. 13 years later, seeing what motivates us to keep going, because now it's transmog. I'm going to be farming transmog until I die, and because I want to look good. That's the most important thing for me.
Well, I keep saying I don't even go for that, because I just wear vanilla and TBC gear anyway. All of my transmogs are vanilla and TPC.
So conservative. Wow. Hey,
I'm not keen on any of the rest of it.
No, you stick with what you got and you're happy with it. Then
apart from my hat, I use my captain's hat from WOD. That's the main edition.
Did you see all those new pirate hats that are coming?
Yes. Yeah. There's one of them. It jams. Actually, there's one zone in Kulturas, the main zone, where it forces you to wear headgear. So when you're doing a quest where you're infiltrating some pirates, and it puts the pirate hats on you, and there's nothing you can do about it. And there's another area where you get a miner's hat jammed on your head. And actually that one stays even when you finish the quest. If you go back there, it puts the miner's hat back on you, which I don't like the look of that at all. So it does these weird things in various places. But there was one place where I thought it had a gnome following me around. I thought I'd done all the quests with it, but it's still following me around whenever I'm in that area. Turns out there's one quest I hadn't done, because it's one of those, because in alpha, lots of bugs, and it just wasn't showing up on the map.
Of course.
So it wasn't it wasn't showing anywhere. So I just killed this thing and it completed the quest, and then she buggered off, so that was fine. But yeah, there's this one place where, again, unless there's a quest that's just not in the game yet that I've got to complete, every time I go there, I get a miner's hat on. And I can't remove it. It's not a buff or anything that I can remove. It's just a miner's hat, and that's it. Whenever I go there, that's what I've got.
Back to the alpha. Any favorite things that made you go like, wow, this is wow?
Bees. I like in Stormsong Valley, actually, which is really nice. It's the prettiest zone out of a lot of them. The bees look really good. They're actually amazing. So riding the bee mount is not so amazing, because your hands are well above its head. You're not holding. You're supposed to be holding on to reins, but there's nothing there. But yeah, that's actually really good. I like the whole zone. There's also a really good bit in it, a really cool bit, where you go from the nursery around the Billy Goat's Gruff. You go over a bridge, and someone underneath it shouts, "Oh, you must pay a toll." And you go down, it's like a troll, but it's not a troll. It's someone just wearing a troll mask. It's a rare mob who just tries to beat you up.
Oh, that's awesome.
A blood elf in a troll mask.
Oh, really? Was it really?
I think it was.
Yeah.
It could be a human. I can't tell because it had a troll master.
Yeah, I've quested there. Yeah, I've quested there a good bit. I know I haven't completed everything. I don't think I've encountered that rare mob. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I haven't encountered that rare mob because that sounds awesome. I really do like that evil-looking base. I know it's supposed to be a temple for the storm gods, or yeah. Oh no! This is in Stormsong Valley.
Right, yeah. Okay.
It's that thing that looks like a big kraken or a big squid.
Oh, I see. I've got I know what you mean. Yeah,
it's like when I first saw it, I was doing some quest and I was talking with someone. I was about to turn in the quest. I look up, I see this. It's like a supervillain's base. That's how I saw it. I was like, oh my god, I gotta look at it. So I just darted right over there and tried to get as close as I could before the blizzard things prevented me from getting
there's some areas around there that you can actually get there via quest, but yeah, there's little areas if you just try and water stride there, it kicks you out again. But I mean, that's what I assume is the link to N'Zoth, because the nearest thing there, I mean, there's sort of kraken-like beasts actually. There's a particular walkway that you can go over, which is not a physical walkway. It's just like some wizards are doing something, so you're walking on water. And there's some things underneath it which you wouldn't want to pull. We've got a lot of health. But I'm just wondering if that's an N'Zoth type thing, because he's the one with the tentacles and the kraken type old god.
It certainly feels like it, or it's going to be a very close reference to it, despite the boons that these magic people, that these not druids, but
cultists is what I would call them, because
you think they're more like cultists?
They are very like the old gods cultists, the twilight cultists.
Well, they do serve as a very primary function of the Kulturas fleets. There's like one per ship, and each one is supposed to bless the ship with who knows, old god juju that lets them traverse the seas in a safe manner. So do you think that we're going to fight N'Zoth or come very close to it?
I wouldn't rule it out now that we know that we've got this in the very first raid. You've got this facility for potentially learning how to kill old gods. Then we're going to be going after Ashara, who herself has links with the old gods, and presumably N'Zoth directly, because that's the sort of area we're going to. It would not surprise me if the major boss of the expansion, now that if we can take on an entire world soul, if we can take on Titans, why not? It is possible. I wouldn't have thought it was possible a year ago, but now it is, I think.
It's like, we've seen Argus. You're not a big deal. We've seen, come on. My tank has taken a scythe that cuts into the universe itself. If you recall, like how that looks, and it's an amazing effect. I was totally floored when I first saw it. I was like, wow, why didn't I, God, we have never seen anything like this before. This is amazing. So fighting an old god, not a big deal. But I'm hoping for a twist. I'm hoping for a really nice twist. Sort of like what happened with Mrs. Pandaria, where at first we just kind of started off, hey, let's go off into Pandaland and help these people out. And I wouldn't have thought that we would end up having this whole Siege of Orgrimmar experience. I didn't expect. I believe that they had teased it well before, but I wouldn't have really quite have seen the connection, because all of a sudden, okay, Garrosh is just going, hey, I'll just eat this heart of an old god. It's not a big deal. I'll just nosh on it, and maybe I'll power up a little bit.
Well, I mean, the thing is with Mr. Pandaria, see, I really liked that expansion, and I particularly liked the fact that for the first time we were getting new lore. It was storylines not based on Warcraft 1, 2, or 3, which is the first expansion where that really happened. But it was also quite unpopular for that. There were people, I remember Preach doing a video going, I don't know who these guys are, as if that were a bad thing. And I thought, well, actually, no, that's a really good thing, because there was plenty of stuff. It's not like we didn't know who they were when you were doing the quest. It all explained it. And there was a lot of really good stuff on the Isle of Thunder in particular. But it was. So then we got Warlords of Draenor. It's almost like Blizzard went, okay, you didn't like the fact you didn't know these people. Right, we're going to jam everyone you've ever known. Oh no, a load of them are dead. I know. Time travel, alternate universe. That'll sort that out. So I wonder if Blizzard got a bit stung by it and, maybe a little bit reserved about doing anything that doesn't draw on an older storyline now. I mean, it would be nice. I would love it, but after MoP, I just wonder if Blizzard would.
I remember when I was there at BlizzCon when they announced Warlords of Draenor, and Chris Metzen, he was the one that was he preceded the announcement. He was so hyped up for it, like he was so nostalgic over this, and he looked. He sold it. He always sells it very well. He looked hyped up and excited, and a year and some change later, we were at where we're at. And I wonder, was that story like his brainchild? Was that kind of his shtick that he wants something like that? I don't know.
It's difficult to sell because he's always hyped up about everything, which is why he was always quite a good front man.
Oh, yeah.
Because it doesn't matter what it is, he's hyped up about it.
Wheat thins! Everyone tell me right now, wheat thins! And I'd be like, wheat thins! All right, let's do this.
Yeah. So no, I'm not sure. It is possible, for all the great things he's brought. I gather that it's his fault that I have the Retribution passive. So, it's in my naughty books for that one. Because he thinks it's cool when he plays a paladin. I also heard, although I don't know if this is true, that he was also the one who didn't like the idea of player housing, but I don't know about that one.
Oh, that's interesting. That's interesting. I guess it's because to him it's not exciting. It's not, it's not orcish. It's not going out and smashing the face with a giant hammer. It is.
You just cut its head off and drag it back, and you can put it on your wall.
Yeah. You can hang it up, and that would be awesome. Would you be up for player housing? Like true blue player housing?
Because I've seen it in different MMOs, and the different MMOs do it in different ways, and they're all, if you could best features of each of them, it's actually really effective. Because one thing that I think Blizzard don't always acknowledge is it's not all about gear. There's far more people will put more effort into getting stuff that allows them to, the way they want to develop their character is effectively customizing that character. Gear comes and goes. I remember, for example, back in Wrath, I quit the game at the end of the first tier. I wasn't happy with it. Basically, I got to level cap, and then 3 days later, I'd completed every raid boss in the game. I hadn't even done the dungeons yet, and then it was just achievements. So I thought, right, I'm quitting. I said to my guild, it's quite a good guild at the time. I said, I'll stay till the end of the thing, but then I'm leaving. And then I missed out on Ulduar and all the rest of it. Well, I didn't know that was coming. But then I came back on a very casual basis because basically my graphics card exploded and it wouldn't play any other games. But Warcraft's always really good on a crap computer. So, and I wasn't earning a lot at the time, so I couldn't afford to just get another a good gaming graphics card. So I came back and I had the best gear in the game when I left. But here I was, still in the same expansion, and it was trash. And so that's the thing. The gear, in a matter of months is worthless. Whereas anything you can develop that's cosmetic is for years. It lasts as long as you'll last in that game. People would love, and you can see the effort people put into it in other games like, the games I play like Elder Scrolls Online, Star Wars: The Old Republic, Lord of the Rings Online, that sort of stuff. The effort some people put into going out, and especially you can tie a lot of this stuff into other content. You can have it from professions. You can have it from Blizzard keeps saying they want us to go out in the world. Well, Elder Scrolls Online does that. They every and it's frequent, every month at least, there's an event which it's only this weekend. Go to this guy, you can get this furniture or something for your house, and if you don't get it that weekend, you ain't getting it. It's not in the game anymore. The idea of just coming up with assets, which it's a one-time only thing. You play the game, then you can get it, and if you don't, well, you ain't getting it. It's not going to be on the store. It's not going to be available anywhere else. And that's quite good. And the effort some people put into customizing their houses. They spend ages on it, and then they can invite people around or take photos and on Instagram or videos, put it on YouTube. And it's a whole sort of fandom that doesn't exist in World of Warcraft. You know, they're missing out on that activity.
You know, you make a really interesting point by one bringing up the Elder Scrolls anecdote, as well as selling the idea of transmogrification and the relative comparison to just acquiring gear as a power game, as a progression sort of deal. And I think that's a really good wedge to make a really strong argument for a form of player housing, a form of, you know, customization, things like that, because I've seen, you know, I do auction stuff every now and then, and there is a lot of gold to be made. There's a big industry in just trying to dress your character in the sluttiest mug that you can think of, or just the cool, awesome thing that you can get, or that black bladed katana blade, the fell steel blade. You know, that's still going for tons and tons of gold. So selling another paper doll to decorate, so to speak, and in this case it's a whole freaking house like paper doll, something like that could possibly make for a huge content platform that can build upon, just like you said, professions, achievements, drops from raids, and so on and so forth. It's kind of similar to how we see how they added when they did pet battles. They just kind of shoehorned a bunch of pets into some bosses, like, cool, here we go. Same thing with music, like those little music sheets
stuff, the DJ stuff.
Yeah, so why not throw in, you know, leather couch cushions or something like that, or, you know, green wooden planks that drop off of Ragnaros. Why does he have them? Who gives a shit? Just go ahead and let people farm for that stuff and decorate another thing for them, because there's a continuing conversation among players, or I should say more specifically among critics of the World of Warcraft, that say, oh, well, shoot, all Blizzard cares about is the how much time are you spending online? How much time are you spending grinding stuff away? Grind. Well, I guess a good approach to ask Blizzard is, let's give players something else to grind for, something totally different, such as these new cosmetics in this big, beautiful house-like thing that I can make. Oh,
and the thing is, some people criticize it because saying, well, that's because you'd spend all your time in the player housing, because that was the problem with WoD garrisons, is everyone just stayed in their garrison. But that isn't what would happen with an actual player housing system, because you can't kit it out by staying in your house. You have to go out. You know, you can put stuff out in the world. You can go to the old zones. Blizzard want to populate the world. What better way than getting them to search for things? And it's not obvious where it is, because maybe it's random spawns. Maybe you need to be in a zone, and at a random time of day, there'll be an event where you can get this thing, but it's only going to be once a day, and it's going to be at a random time.
Imagine if they made that one of those weekly events where someone spawns and they can drop this kind of thing, or a vendor pops up and you can buy this thing over there. Those kinds of things would definitely get players out, and, you know, to just do more of everything. Definitely everything. When I first thought of how I would have done player housing, my first thought was, well, you know what? Forget the whole farming for stuff, and forget about like utility, because that was a big thing that I had against the Lords of Draenor Garrison, is that they had too much utility, and I wouldn't mind if it had no utility at all. It's just a thing to show off to your friends, take a couple screenshots, tweet it to people, whatever you want. And my idea was, let's just keep it simple and just make it based on whatever achievements that you have. Because if you recall from the World of Draenor Garrison, there were those pedestals, and you just click on a pedestal and then you can choose a number of statues that you put up. So like in this house of ours, whatever that is, we can have like a rack of heads, and you can choose, hey, which dragon head do you want to have on that one and that one and that one. So, you know, it could be a very fixed system to start with, but if we were to possibly build upon that more and include things like drops from dungeon bosses, raid bosses, professions, rare materials, and stuff like that, it can become like this really, really big and deep system that most people might not give one shit about. And that's okay, because maybe it's not for them, but for those who are participating in it, it's a huge time sink and a huge and a big and possibly fun way to spend time in the game.
Well, there would be players who would play the game just for that. That's enough content if it's done properly. And it's a big chunk of players who maybe play the game now and you don't. So, you know, it's just one of those things that and Blizzard are constantly having to come up with ways to try and encourage us to do all this content. I mean, you know, Mythic Plus dungeons and raids and keep going back. Titan Fortune was all about getting us back into old raids. It certainly wasn't for gearing us up so we could knock over bosses and not take the loot when we finally killed it, because Blizzard actually said that was a bad thing. So the only thing it existed for was to keep us going back. So why do that just for the sake of gear? We don't need to always. Very few people are that motivated by gear. More people are motivated by something that's going to last a lot longer than a few months. But, you know, they have this thing against it, you know, and they keep ignoring my request for a conversation on the subject. So,
you know, I've seen the conversations go in both directions, because in my guild, I see people that even now, with only a couple of months left in the expansion, they still want to go back because they still want to get that. They still want to complete that set. They want to get their 4-piece sets. They want to get they want to complete a heroic set or something like that. So I can at least understand and respect that desire, because that whole feeling of having all your gear say heroic on it, that definitely means something too. But I was never really sold on the idea that Ian has pushed this entire time of, you know, people want these kinds of, you know, we want these moments of surprise, and we want it to feel good that you're going back to do this content over and over again, and we want to still give you a chance to feel rewarded when you do that. And it's still, even now, really hard for me to understand it, because what he's asking me as a player is to keep going and disappoint myself every time I don't get that cool thing. But when I finally do get it, how do I feel? Is it a moment of excitement or is it a moment of relief? And for me, it's more of a moment of relief. It's like, oh, finally I got it. I'm out of here. I ain't coming back to this shit no more.
Yeah, well, it was the same thing. I mean, we just did Mythic Argus, and that's all it was at the end, relief. I wasn't at all happy. I was just glad it was over.
Yeah.
Because
and
that's sometimes what it is when you have to spend too long or longer than you expected to do a thing, whatever it may be. It is always, like you say, relief rather than elation.
And
so elation when it's an achievement. If you don't feel it's an achievement, then where's the, you know, you can't really enjoy it.
Yeah, I've said it a number of times over the course of Legion that with regards to legendaries, Titan forging, that possibility equates to expectation. You know, you're just going to keep doing this until you're done, and every moment that you don't get it sucks until you finally do get it, and it's like, okay, cool, I got it. Whew, about freaking time, and then you're good to go. So it would be great if Blizzard really shifted gears, and I think they have with regards to Azerite Gear, because now at least there's a goal in sight and there is a path to do it. There's still the matter of chance to get it, and with regards to things like Mythic Plus, you still need to get to the high enough level so you can get that particular piece at a very high level. But at least there's that path. There is a direction to go into. So God help me if they did provide, if they did have Titan forging on Azerite Gear, I would have lost my mind over that.
I mean, you know, I mean, it was the obvious. They had to sort of not allow that, and the seconds as well. So I was quite pleased when they said there would be no Titan Forge weapons. Because that would have been a nightmare. Yes, that would not have been fun. But as you say, you know, if there's anything decent in Mythic Plus, then you're going to be running that dungeon. And it's really good for someone who happens to get that key at a decent level. You might be on like a casual character or a very poorly geared out, but, you know, you've managed to do keys at a certain level. All of a sudden, you'll come along a load of Mythic Raiders who will be delighted to push you through because they want a chance at that Azerite piece. If it is good enough, you know, it depends. It depends how much better the raid stuff is than the dungeon stuff. And that's the other thing I don't know. Actually, no, the Mythic Plus isn't going to be good enough, so we want the raid stuff or not? Or is it the case that when a new tier comes out, because of course you won't have the Heart of Azerite high enough level to be able to unlock the ones in the raid Azerite gear early on, so maybe actually then Mythic Plus gear looks a bit better. I don't know.
I'm curious because I don't rate at a mythic level, and because of that, I presume that. But part of my guesswork or theorycraft is that when mythic rating comes out, by the time that I'd say mid-level mythic raiders get access to some of this cool Azerite gear, that there's a reasonable chance that those players might not have access to that because their Heart of Azerite level just isn't high enough. So I'm wondering, like, has you and your team, have you guys discussed like how you might possibly, how gear might be doled out? Like, will you consider it? Well, it's like, you know, you don't have access to that yet, so I'm going to take it first because I have access to it.
No, because we don't even know how realistic that is. Because with artifact power, the only thing you could use artifact power on was empowering your weapon. That's all you could use it on. With Azerite, it's different because there's a second use at least for it. So that also suggests that for people who do a lot of content that rewards Azerite, you may actually be able to unlock your next. Obviously, there's going to be caps because Blizzard said that it's going to be relevant throughout the expansion. So the only way to make it relevant is to, just like we had with the artifact weapon, have hard caps where it's like, okay, you've now won the game, well done. You'll have to wait till patch blah before you can unlock any further ones. So it might be that you can do it within a few weeks of a new raid tier opening, or maybe not. So I don't know. It's again one of these unknowns that we have at the moment.
Yeah, I'm curious. There are so many unknowns, and I've been refreshing my browser every now and then, wondering if there's a new build that's coming, so I can tell you, hey, look, there's gnome paladins. That's going to be a thing now. Isn't that great?
I've still got the video where Ian has a.
Oh, what was that? I kind of missed you there.
Sorry, Ian Hazakostas at BlizzCon said no, and I've got the video to prove.
All right, so we've been at it for like a little over an hour, and so all right, this is fun. Was there any other things to chat about? No,
I mean, we can always come back and do it again another time, can't we? We can always think of something, but we've gone through quite a few topics, haven't we, today?
Yeah, and this was fun. So
yeah,
I'll be happy to publish this thing and get this out. Hey, we talked, we did stuff. It was cool. It was fun. We had a good time.
Yeah. But I mean, I have a thing, actually, a bot on one of my Discord channels that tells me when there's a new building, so I can see it hasn't lit up. So,
do you? Okay. Like I'm subscribed to a number of well, I can't look right now, but I'm subscribed to a number of channels. The Arctium one is the one that I frequent a lot. They do a pretty good job of monitoring builds, and they start doing some of the data mining process there too. Because I do a lot of access, or I access like the model viewers a lot when I make video content and stuff. Yeah. So that helps. Oh, by the way, I almost forgot. Congratulations on entering the realm of Adobe software.
I have been using it. See, I've been okay. Photoshop and Premiere Elements for years, and absolutely fine. So then, and I came across After Effects last year. Oh wow, they could do loads of stuff, but I'm sure it's really complicated. But it also had a price tag of £1,000. So I thought, but then I was just, someone suggested another program. I looked at a review of it and thought, maybe. And then I found another review comparing it to some Adobe stuff. And then I found out you can just subscribe for £50 a month and get all their stuff.
Yes.
And I thought, oh, I'll do that then. But what it's meant is I've been trying to use Illustrator and Adobe and After Effects today to try to do some stuff that should be really simple. I've been looking at videos and I'm following exactly what these guys in the videos are doing. And I'm going, hang on a minute, I don't have that button. Or when I press that button, it doesn't do that. What's happening? So it's an absolute nightmare, but I'm learning slowly. I've done a thing. It's taken me all day to
hey, I saw it. You like, I'm sure you've got comments giving props. I will give you props as well. It's hard, and I think what you pulled off is a very good job. And just tell yourself, hey, I'm just getting started. I'm going, and you can take this further. You don't happen. This is kind of a silly question. You don't happen to be a student, do you?
No, I'm a teacher.
You might, you know. Depending on what you teach, you might be able to get a faculty discount on it if you haven't done that already.
No, I haven't. No.
I would definitely look into it. Look for like just go to Adobe's thing, see if there is like an educator's discount. Right. Because I was even looking into that yesterday because I was like, I don't want to pay like $50 a month for this thing.
Yeah.
And so I was looking at the qualifications. I'm like, okay, I definitely don't qualify. I can't even, if I wanted to like temporarily enroll as a student somewhere, that it wouldn't be very economical. But if you are an educator, then that may work. It just depends. It might depend on the country or there might be restrictions there. But I would definitely look into that because you pay, I think, less than half for the subscription. So I think that would be great.
But yeah, no, I've decided I'm gonna set aside a bit of time every Sunday where I'm gonna learn another thing. I'll just have in my mind, right, I'm gonna do this thing. But yeah, so I'm just having to watch. Some tutorials are absolutely god awful. They just go, oh, and you do this thing. And what? I'll have to pause it and go, you've just said a thing and you've not explained how you've done it. So yeah, and Adobe's own tutorial guides are a bit. I mean, they're too basic. Some of it is intuitive enough. So yeah, so I've got a little task for me to do tomorrow or Friday. I've got the last couple of days of my holiday, so I'm not going to spend all of it trying to get my head around this thing. But
don't burn yourself out.
And then I'll try and learn another thing on Sunday. And see
so,
how it goes
so what have you been using for your video software?
Adobe Premiere Elements.
Oh, you've been using Premiere Elements for it. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Premiere Pro is just like your experience with After Effects. It's extremely powerful and it's so easy to get lost. But once you've figured out what you want to do, it becomes a total godsend. It can be so fast to like set certain things up.
I mean, the annoying thing with After Effects I found is you can't export to MP4. So what I've ended up doing is I've just been doing sections, exporting it as AVI and then putting that into Premiere Elements and finishing the whole thing in Premiere Elements and,
how odd.
Exporting to MP4.
Okay. I know that.
I don't understand why you wouldn't be able to do that.
Yeah. I mean, I would suggest check out and see what Premiere Pro see what that can do, because like I said, it's very powerful. I think it's a little bit easier to use than After Effects with regards to creating like decent titles and text and whatnot. Like the intro that I have, that was done entirely with After Effects. But I mean, for like the other things that I do in my videos, Premiere does a fantastic job of quick transitions, editing, and things like that. And also, if you wanted to look into it, Adobe Audition, which you should also have access to, is fantastic for sound editing, cleanup, which is probably the majority of what you want to do. And it does a really good job of keeping your voice like crisp and sounding a lot better than Oh, well, I sound a lot better than on videos than I normally do. So.
Okay. Well, I mean, yeah, there are a lot of apps I know I've access to. I'm not going to try and install all of them.
It's daunting.
Yeah, it's a lot of them. It's really weird as well because I could have one for £20 a month or all of them for 50.
It makes you wonder. It's like wow, like you guys could really let me have access to Premiere Pro and some of these for like, 15, $20 a month. You'll be just fine with making plenty of money off of all of us. But now you just want to go, from 20 all the way up to 50. It's like, okay, fine, sure. I'll just try to use more of this software to make it worth my while.
Well, I mean, if I just learn how to use 2 or 3 of them, then I think that would be pretty good. I agree. I've just got to sit down and try and find a load of tutorials. I suppose that's the next job.
They're a little hard to find, but I'm sure. Yes. I just try to type in Google search. It's like, okay, I want to do this, and it'll kind of give me an idea of what to do. So.
Yeah, but you just have to look at so many. Like I was trying to do one thing today, and I still haven't been working out how to do it. But I've watched 10 different videos of people doing it. But it's like when I press those buttons, it doesn't do it. So, but I'll just keep doing it until it works. Keep looking at more videos. Eventually, I'll find one that's quite good, and then hopefully at that point, I can just subscribe to that person, and it'll tell me everything I could possibly need to know.
When you do find that person, refer them over to me too, because I keep having to look around all haphazardly myself as well. So anyway, let's do this again sometime.
Yeah, right? Sure.
This was cool. This was fun.
Yes, it is. Yeah,
it was a nice little distraction, and I think it always does well to partner up with fellow content creators and see what kinds of ideas come up when we butt our heads together and see what sort of magic comes out.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so anyway, let's head off right now, and I'll see you next time.
All right then, cheers. Thanks a lot. Have a good night.
All right, cool. Good to have you.
Bye
bye.